Professor Mezzich is currently tenured professor of psychiatry at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in New York. Hipólito Unani Professor of Person-Centered Medicine at San Marco National University in Lima and editor of the International Journal of Person-Centered Medicine, London. He has been Secretary General and then the President of the World Psychiatric Association and founding President of the International College of Person-Centered Medicine. He was born in Lima, Peru, the son of Peruvian and Yugoslavian parents, and graduated from Cayetano Heredia Peruvian University Medical School with a Merck Sharp and Donnet First Prize thesis on depression, syndromic profile, and typology. He then completed psychiatric residency, a Master of Science in Academic Psychiatry, and a Master of Arts and PhD in Mathematical Statistical Psychology at Ohio State University, with a dissertation on taxonomy and behavioral science completed at Stanford University, as well as certification by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. He held sequentially professional positions at Stanford University, psychiatry at the School of Medicine, and the University of Pittsburgh Psychiatry at the School of Medicine, and epidemiology at the Graduate School of Public Health before moving to New York. Related to his research, he chaired the WPA section on classification and diagnostic assessment and the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health Group on Diagnosis and Culture. He was also member of the World Health Organization ICD-10 Mental Disorders Work Group, the American Psychiatric Association DSM-4 Task Force, and an US NIMH Epidemiology Study Group. He has authored over 350 scientific journal articles and book chapters and over 30 books, and has received 7 Doctor Honoris Causa degrees from universities in the Americas and Europe. Very good afternoon to you, Sir Professor Mezzich. Thank you for joining us today at this interview series of Meet the WPA Leaders. Sir, we are very grateful to you for your time and that you've agreed to join us and share your experiences, your thoughts, and the work that you have done as the past president of WPA. So you have served as the president of WPA from 2005 to 2008. What vision of WPA attracted you early on to work with this world institution?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray, for this opportunity to talk with you and with our WPA community. Concerning your question about the vision that attracted me to WPA, perhaps I could say that it was the prospect of cultivating science and humanism in a combined way, which seem to have been the key forces that stimulated psychiatrists all over the world in 1950 to come together for the first World Congress of Psychiatry. And also the possibility of developing mental health as essential for general health and as a crucial component of our clinical field. And finally, perhaps to cultivate all of these ideas within the framework of international encounters and collaboration. I saw WPA as a unique opportunity to allow me to develop and cultivate these perspectives.
Thank you, sir. You have been a researcher of remarkable significance and someone who has been widely respected and appreciated. So what lines of research have underlined your academic work and led you to be involved with the WPA?
Thank you. probably the broader field in psychiatry that I cultivated throughout my life has been diagnosis as a concept, uh, as a formulation, and as a process. So initially, I approached diagnosis as a clinical activity, but then in line with my getting a PhD in mathematical psychology, I took it as a statistical uh, opportunity. Then a cultural one, when especially because of the World Psychiatric Association, I had opportunity to interact with colleagues and people around the world. And also as an epidemiological tool to try to understand the patterns of disease and health around the world. So all of that I did within the general framework of diagnosis, or this interest to try to understand reality, understand the situation, so that we can have better basis for organizing our clinical care activities. And so and this has been cultivated both at the clinical level, but also at the community or population level. Diagnosis of clinical situations and diagnosis of social situations as well.
This is incredible, sir. Listening to you gives us this immense sense of the wonderful work, your dedication, and your contributions to psychiatry globally. So, what have been the timelines and stages of your leadership responsibilities at WPA?
Well, I have been blessed with 37 years of institutional work with the World Psychiatric Association. Since 1984, when I attended the World Congress of Psychiatry in Vienna, Austria, and was elected secretary of the WPA section on diagnosis and classification. And then a few years later, I was elected chair, which I maintained until 1996, for 12 years, when I was elected Secretary General of the World Psychiatric Association. And as a member of the Security Committee, I was not at that time allowed to have a leadership position in the WPA sections. So after 1996, I continued to be associated with the classification and diagnosis section because that has been my academic field, but as an honorary chair. And I'm very pleased to continue interacting with my colleagues in that one of the most active sections of WPA in that way. After 1996, or on 1996, when I was elected Secretary General, I worked in that position as statutory for 6 years. And that gave me the opportunity to become very closely familiar with the work of WPA. In fact, it's interesting perhaps to note that the Secretary General used to be the most important position in WPA because at the beginning, the Secretary General was responsible to organize an institution that was just emerging. And as it has been said, the main asset of any organization is its ability to organize itself. And so the first Secretary Generals of WPA were in the position for 10 or 12 years. The first one, Henri A. from France, and then the second one, Dennis Lee from the United Kingdom. So I had this opportunity to work as a Secretary General and then to be elected President-elect in 2002. And by then, the only president who had been previously a Secretary General was Professor Juan Jose Lopez Ibor Jr. from Spain, who unfortunately died about 6 years ago. And I'm the only other one who has had this opportunity to work both as a Secretary General and then as a President. So after being elected in 2002 as a President-elect, I had this position trying to assist Professor Ahmed Okasha, who was then the President in functions. And then in 2005, I started my presidency of WPA for 3 years until 2008. I was saying that after completing my presidency of WPA in 2008, I became member of the Council of Former Presidents, a group with which I continue to be associated. And we had our latest meeting a week ago. So those are the 37 years that I have been associated with WPA. So, that is what I could say in terms of the stages of my association with WPA.
Professor Mezzich, you've mentioned nearly 37 years of work. And I'm sure during this time, there have been hundreds of projects. But what projects or achievements have excited you the most in the various stages of your responsibilities with the WPA and other psychiatric organizations?
Well, thank you for your question. As a secretary and then chair of the WPA section on classification and diagnostic evaluation, I was in a position to bring to that activity my previous experience as a member of the executive committee of the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and its versions DSM-3 and DSM-4, and also as a member of the work group of the World Health Organization that developed ICD-10. And then after that, I was the chair of the initial group that created the basis for ICD-11. And then I became just a regular member of the work group for ICD-11. So with that experience in the United States and in the international scene, I was very pleased to have the opportunity to engage the richness of WPA through the kindness of Peter Berner, the then Secretary General of WPA, who was most gracious in facilitating my access to all member societies of WPA. And with that, I conducted a survey that was lucky to obtain responses from virtually all member societies of WPA. As you know, WPA is one of the associations with the largest numbers of member societies from different countries. So it was a tremendous opportunity to be able to be aware of the views of member societies literally from every corner of the world in order to try to obtain suggestions about how to organize not just a classification of mental disorders, but a way to formulate diagnosis in a comprehensive manner. something that at that time was considered perhaps not the popular thing to do. The main focus was on just classifying disorders. But now we have learned that in order to be able to help people better, we need not only to identify disorders, but to have a good view of the context of the patient and various factors that influence the emergence and maintenance of disorders, as well as to be able to assess the positive health indicators such as quality of life. So this survey of international national societies on what would be important to consider in diagnostic formulation led to the development of the international guidelines for diagnostic assessment that was published in the British Journal of Psychiatry in 2003, and which is still used in some places, but that later on led to another development that we call the person-centered integral diagnosis model that was published in the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry, and then was the basis for a number of practical guides, such as perhaps the most successful one, the Latin American Guide for Psychiatric Diagnosis, published by the Latin American Psychiatric Association, a regional society affiliated with WPA, and which has made it official in Latin American countries. So this opportunity to develop these systems, engage in the richness, scientific and humanistic of WPA, was the most stimulating aspect of my work in the classification and diagnostic evaluation section of WPA. Then, as I mentioned before, my second stage was as a Secretary General of WPA from 1996 to 2002. And here I was able to learn a lot about major organizations. And I had an epidemiological mind trying to look at patterns. But this was a tremendous experience, a practical experience in setting the basis for the organization of a major body. And according to the statutes, the Secretary General at that time was responsible for the administrative functioning of the association. So I was very humbled by that responsibility. And I had opportunity to develop, for example, the first manual of procedures that was organized in WPA, and which continues now being edited periodically, enriched periodically to incorporate new procedures that facilitate the functioning of WPA. Also, I helped with development of directory of sections that did not exist before, and working with leaders who were responsible for these different sections of the association. And then perhaps even for the General Assembly of WPA, I was very happy to help design a procedure that allow us to prepare and present a summary of the minutes of the association at the end of the association as the last part, instead of waiting for months for publishing the minutes. Official minutes are published when they are ready, have been edited, etc., which may take weeks and months. But I think we uh, we were happy and well to produce this summary at the end of the General Assembly. So there were these various little aspects of the organization of WPA, which I found as a tremendous opportunity to engage the association in its various components and to try to advance the contributions that WPA could make. In 2002, I was elected president in the World Congress of Psychiatry in Japan. And so for 3 years, I was a bit more relaxed because Secretary General was the most demanding activity that I have had in WPA. Often sleeping only 1 hour because there was so much work to do. So as president-elect, I was just assisting the then President Ahmed Okasha in the fulfillment of his responsibilities, and so I was much more relaxed. Then in 2005, I started my activities as a president for 3 years until 2008. And here, as president, was a tremendous opportunity to engage all the components of WPA. It's more than 100 member societies, more than 60 scientific sections. And in addition of learning about what they do, I was very happy to be able to work with them in the development of a new strategy, a new theory, and a new strategy to practice psychiatry that we call psychiatry for the person, proposing that the person should be at the center of the concept of health and the concept of health actions. And it happened that the majority of member societies and scientific sections expressed great interest in this approach. And so we're able to start this with energy and with considerable success, and have a number of publications to reflecting the development of this strategy of psychiatry for the person, which then became my presidential theme. And another very rewarding aspect of my presidency was to have the opportunity to work with the leaders of a number of global health institutions, such as the World Health Organization, the World Medical Association, a number of specialty associations such as the World Association of Family Doctors, the World Association of, or actually World Federation of Neurology, but also with International Council of Nurses. And then perhaps the opportunity to work also with patient organizations and families was a very rewarding aspect of my experience as president of WPA. After 2008, when I passed the leadership to the then president-elect, Professor Mario May, I have been with the Council of former presidents, and we continue to be quite active. The whole council is around a number of topics, particularly those dealing with history of WPA, something that few associations cultivate as well as WPA. And I think that is why I think that we should be very grateful to first Professor Sartorius, and then now Professor Afzal Javed, who have put a lot of emphasis on the importance of cultivating a history of WPA. Another activity of the council has been that I have been very happy as working on is that on trying to visualize the future of WPA and to formulate recommendations for the further development of WPA. So I think those are the main activities and achievements that I have been blessed with in the various stages of my work with the World Psychiatric Association.
So, listening to your aspirations, your dreams, your achievements is giving me these goosebumps, just realizing and thinking the incredible work that you've put in, sleeping only 1 hour a day to ensure that your plans are implemented. If this is so emotionally exciting for me, I would like you to tell us what moments are the emotional highlights of your life during your experience during your WPA, and especially during the 37 years that you've been involved.
Thank you, Dr. Ray, for commenting so gracefully about my report, but also for your question now. Yes, in addition to the more official activities of WPA, there have been some special moments that have been quite touching for me. One perhaps is when I had the opportunity to visit several South Asian countries when they were devastated by the tsunami during my presidency of WPA. And when after visiting the communities that have been devastated by this tragedy, we had opportunity to meet with the leaders of the national societies of those countries to discuss how to address those challenges in a way that we could be most helpful. Working, for example, with the World Health Organization and other organizations, but being in touch with communities that had been affected so tragically, and then with our colleagues from those national societies that were so dedicated to trying to respond to the need in the most effective manner was very touching for me. But also, there was one moment I particularly remember in 2006 when WPA organized a thematic conference in Dresden, Germany, on a topic that was initially quite shocked to learn that it was the main theme, and that was coercion, a very sensitive issue, and which, however, had received a lot of research by various sections and member societies of WPA, particularly in Europe. And therefore, as a president, I was expected to be there to lead the event. And what was surprising to me was that for the first time, it seems, a group of protesters against psychiatry agreed to come inside the Congress instead of just protesting outside to talk with us. And a meeting with them that was scheduled for 1 hour extended to 3 hours. And these leaders of the anti-psychiatry group were so well organized that the next day, the proceedings of our meeting, the leadership of WPA and a group of them, was already in social media. But particularly touching for me within that already quite emotional experience of being with other human beings, that somehow experience what we do in a way that was not always rewarding, was when I had a chance to attend with the whole executive committee a lecture by Dorothea Book, a legendary victim of Nazi psychiatry, who offered a keynote lecture at that conference on coercion, and who said that more devastating than being sterilized physically for her was to realize that psychiatrists thought that she had nothing interesting to say. I think that stimulated me tremendously to try to continue working towards this perspective of psychiatry for the person. So that the views that each human being may have about their mental health could be approached with great interest and humility, as well as with clinical effectiveness, so that we can be as helpful as possible. So that was perhaps the culmination of my experience with WPA, and a video that was also filmed by this group of protesters who had come into our Congress for the first time, still is available in social media. And I'm very pleased and humbled to look at it time to time, to remember how important it is to be in close touch with the people we serve. That is what I could share with you, Dr. Ray.
So kindly allow me to ask you a few more questions on this. So do you think the needs and opportunities have changed in the decades that you have been associated in this specialty?
If things have, how things have changed.
Yes, the needs of the profession, how things have changed in the last 50, 60 years you've been associated.
Well, as they say about many things, they have changed a lot, and they remain the same a lot as well. They have changed in many ways related to the development, for example, of technology, which now has offered us the opportunity to interact through the internet, as we are doing now, you and I. And the whole field of digital tools that are available now, which, however, are both blessings but also dangers. And I think this leads to consider what is remain the same in our profession and in the field of mental health. Namely, that regardless of the technological means that we may use to extend ourselves as clinicians and psychiatrists, it remains as the main focus people who present their problems and who are expecting from us not only a technological response of what diagnosis may be the most precise, or what medication the most effective one, but other human beings as psychiatrists who are willing to deal with them person to person. And realizing that, as they say, if you treat a disease, you win or you lose. But if you treat a person, you always win. And not only we win, but we can have the most rewarding aspect of our a clinical activity and a noble profession. So I think that is, I would say, my comment on what has changed and what has remained the same in our field. And I think that perhaps this could also lead us to consider some ideas about how to further develop this most important medical specialty and association. I say medical specialty because I think WPA is the most important reference for psychiatry across the world, because it encompasses everybody in this world of us. And that we have, therefore, the opportunity to learn, as I'm doing now from you, Dr. Ray, and as we can always do from colleagues around the world, about better ways to understand the problems of human beings, as well as the opportunities to enhance their life and well-being. So that's what I could say, commenting about your question, Dr. Ray.
So thank you for this brilliant assurance. Actually thinking it is a complete win-win situation for all of us. Because when we treat a patient, it is not just the patient who wins and the family who wins, it is the doctor, the professionals who win as well. So this is a brilliant message that goes out to the world community of psychiatrists today. So what recommendations would you offer for the development of WPA?
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Well, as our current president, Professor Afzal Javed, has emphasized continuously, and this is one of the messages that he communicates to us that I appreciate greatly, is that we should always remember that WPA has key components, such as our member societies and our scientific sections. And therefore, we should always be aware of them and work closely with them for the further development of WPA, a development that will not be just a new idea, but an idea that emerges from the basis of WPA. Also, I would suggest that may be useful to consider that our noble profession in psychiatry is both a clinical field, a clinical specialty, but also a health field committed to the promotion of well-being for all. So I hope and trust that as WPA continues evolving, we'll continue advancing with our scientific procedures, but mostly
New York,
with the
1
possibility
347
of
858 7822.
the possibility of enhancing the life project of every patient we see. So not only their clinical problems are ameliorated and healed, but also that they can advance the fulfillment of their lives. Thank you for your question, Dr. Ray.
So today, Professor Mezzich is recognized as a world teacher, a mentor, and a role model for professional growth. I'm sure the whole world community who will be watching this video will incredibly benefit listening to your experiences, your hard work, your dedication, and the love that you've shown for this specialty.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray. I enjoyed tremendously your very thoughtful and graceful interview.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
See you.
Professor Mezzich, thank you, sir, for talking to us today and for the very important messages that you've given in your presentation. We would like to wish you the very best for the future and for your good health. Thank you.